連回憶都係有罪嘅。政權將已經被囚禁嘅鄒幸彤再次拘捕，又拉咗另外6個人，指控佢哋利用敏感日子去煽動仇恨國家。我想問，點解6·4咁敏感啊？點解咁驚人提起啊？因為政權心虛，因為政權膽怯，因為政權好害怕，害怕面對當年嘅真相，害怕面對自己當年犯下嘅滔天罪行，係咪？但係無論呢個政權用幾多強橫暴力嘅手段，佢哋永遠刪除唔到人民嘅記憶，佢哋永遠抹走唔到呢一筆血債，因為屠殺人民嘅政權將會永遠被釘喺恥辱之柱上邊，係咪？而終有一日，我哋深信歷史係會對呢個鎮壓人民嘅政權作出審判嘅，係咪？而家支聯會嘅主席李卓人、2位副主席何俊仁、鄒幸彤，因為堅持結束黨專政嘅綱領，係被拘捕囚禁。但我想講，政權審判嘅唔係佢哋3個，而係我哋每一個曾經喺香港6月4號晚上走入維園，點起燭光，守護良知，拒絕遺忘嘅香港人，係咪？但係佢哋3個雖然面對咁惡毒嘅政治審判，佢哋並冇向強權低頭，佢哋堅持悼念6·4係冇罪嘅。而我哋生活喺海外，既然我哋有自由繼續發聲，我哋更加冇理由放棄。我哋一定會繼續同喺香港受到不義審判嘅人繼續肩並肩同行，係咪？係。過去每年悼念6·4嘅晚會，唔單止係代表咗香港人長年累月嘅堅持，其實亦都係為咗喺中國被禁制悼念嘅人發聲，特別係嗰啲喺鎮壓裏邊死去咗親人子女嘅天安門母親，佢哋每年喺維園嘅點點燭光，喺6·4晚會上邊獲得咗支撐落去嘅安慰同埋力量。我想喺度代表大家承諾天安門母親，雖然支聯會已經倒下，雖然6·4晚會被禁制，但係佢哋永遠唔會孤軍作戰嘅，係咪？因為我哋仲喺度，雖然我哋散落喺唔同嘅地方，我哋會繼續堅持悼念6·4，會繼續堅持追究屠城責任，直至忠義來臨嘅一日，係咪？各位，追究屠城責任唔單止係為咗死者尋求公義，亦都係為咗生者而戰。35年過去，6·4仲未過去，因為好多人每一日仍然生活喺專制獨裁嘅陰影底下。喺國安法立法之後，香港人以往享有嘅自由同埋人權已經係被摧殘到體無完膚，而我哋過往多年嚟追求我哋應得嘅民主，換嚟嘅係殘酷無情嘅鎮壓。喺幾日前，我哋好痛心，我哋睇到47人案，我哋好多嘅戰友係被法庭定罪，係莫須有，赤裸裸就係對佢哋爭取民主嘅政治報復。除咗喺香港之外，中共政權喺西藏、新疆、中國大陸好多唔同嘅地方犯下種種違反人權、反人道嘅罪行，罄竹難書。所以我哋今天呼應89學運，追求民主、反抗獨裁嘅訴求，就係要繼續呢一場未完結嘅抗爭，爭取結束壓喺人民頭上嘅專制獨裁，係咪？係。我哋心裏邊有一個共同嘅夢想，呢個夢想永遠都係唔會死嘅。我哋夢想有一日， 我哋可以翻到去熱愛嘅土地，呼吸自由空氣。我哋夢想有一日，我哋可以自由咁選舉屬於我哋自己嘅政府。我哋夢想有一日，冇一個人再需要活喺專制獨裁嘅恐懼之下。我哋唔知前面嘅路有幾遠，但係我深信，只要我哋冇放棄，我哋終有一日係會走到終點嘅，好唔好？好！反抗獨裁，民主必勝，無忘六四，永不放棄。I will try to recap my speech in English. I stand here in solidarity with you against the state repression. June 4 has become a forbidden word, and even memory is a crime in today's Hong Kong under the political subtraction. Zhou Hentong and the other 6 people were arrested under the accusation of inciting sedition against the state power. We strongly condemn the Hong Kong authorities for their suppression on the voice to ask for justice for the victims of Tiananmen massacre. We will continue to stand firm with the Tiananmen mother. Our fight is not only for the dead, but also for the living. No one should live under the fear of a dictatorship. Everyone should enjoy their freedom and democracy they deserve. That's why we must echo the students' demand in 1989 and carry on this unfinished struggle for democracy. We will fight till the end in solidarity. Thank you.
Next, we have Beijing Li, founder of one of our organizers, China Deviants. 跟住係有份籌辦今次活動嘅組織 China Deviants 嘅發起人 Li Beijing。
Thank you for having me here. My name is Beijing Li, also known as Apple. I'm the founder of China Deviants, a London-based Chinese diaspora community. Thank you for joining us today to commemorate the Tiananmen Square massacre, a pivotal moment in our history that continues to resonate deeply with us. The Tiananmen massacre is not just a chapter in our history. It is a stark reminder of the lengths to which authoritarian regime will go to maintain power. On June 1st, what are you doing? Sorry, that was a mistake. That was supposed to be part of the show, the performance, and but the timing was wrong. So please don't be worried. Yes. So the Tiananmen massacre is not just a chapter in the history. On the June 4th, 1989, thousands of peaceful protesters calling for political reform and freedom were met with brutal military force. Hundreds, if not thousands, lost their lives. Their courage and sacrifice should not be seen as distant memories, but as a vivid warning of what can happen when freedom is suppressed. Today, as we remember this atrocity, we must recognize that it is not a relic of the past. The suppression of dissidents, the denial of basic human rights, and the brutal enforcement of the authoritarian control are ongoing realities. The struggle for freedom and justice that those brave souls embody is still very much alive. That makes you wonder if Blank Paper movement would be wiped out on the same day in the future. We see echoes of Tiananmen in various forms of transnational repression today. China's authorities continue to monitor and intimidate those who speak out against the regime, even beyond China's border. From harassment of activists in the diaspora to cyber attack and threat against families back home, the tactics are varied, but the intent is clear: silence dissident, dissent at all costs. These actions are not just attack on individuals, but on the principle of freedom and democracy. The intimidation tactics used against activities like us are designed to instill fear and suppress our voices. They aim to make us believe that we are alone, that resistance is futile, and the world is not watching. But we're not alone, and our voices will not be silenced. The struggle for freedom and human rights is ongoing. Tiananmen is not just the past atrocity, but a present threat to anyone who dare to dream of a free society. It is crucial that we pay attention to these issues, support those who are oppressed, and demand safe space for Chinese citizens to voice their concerns without fear. We must raise awareness about the ongoing surveillance and political oppression of Chinese citizens abroad. We must urge democratic society to protect the rights and safety of these who seek refuge within their borders. By doing so, we honor the memory of those who perished in the Tiananmen and reaffirm our commitment to the cause. Let us honor the memory of those who perished at the Tiananmen by continuing their fight for a just and democratic society. Let their sacrifice inspire us to stand up against tyranny and support one another in the pursuit of truth and freedom. Thank you.
First of all, we apologize for the disruption. That was actually supposedly part of the performance art performance later in the schedule, but one of the actors we mixed up the scheduling, so that was happening. But what you see, the reaction from us are real. Our fears of transnational repression are real. This is a really real threat, and we are under it every day. 頭先解釋一下啦，我哋頭先嗰個咧，其實係原本係 China Division 嘅表演藝術嘅一個環節嚟嘅，不過咧佢哋就其中一位演員就搞錯咗個時間表，就早咗表演。咁但係咧，我哋頭先你哋見到我哋各位嘅表情嘅反應咧係真嘅。我哋每日咧都係要面對住呢個跨境鎮壓嘅威脅，呢啲威脅咧係真實存在，而無時無刻咧亦都唔會放過我哋嘅。Now we have Shasha Desmark, the Chief Executive of Amnesty International UK。我哋而家有請國際特赦組織英國分會嘅行政總裁 Shasha Desmark。
Thank you, my friends. There can be no better place, no more important place for us to be loud and showing our solidarity than in the centre of power, watched by great figures of history and freedom, and a crossroads of the world, because we must speak loudly to the world. We're here to commemorate. We're here to show solidarity, but not just with the memory of 1989, but also with our fellow citizens in China today. The fact that speaking about June 4th, 1989 has been made taboo in China speaks volumes about how desperate the authorities are, in the extent to which they are determined to deny this dark history and try and wipe it from the collective memory and from the public sphere. But that is why it is all the more important what we are doing here today, and why so many people around the world are also so importantly remembering and speaking in the way that we are today. We must shine a light on that history. We must say that our collective memory is alive and respects not just the memory of those who were killed on the 4th of June 1989, but the millions of people standing up for human rights today, at the very moment I am speaking to you and standing here in China and Hong Kong. For of course, while there is a climate of fear which aims to gag people, not just in China, but also in Hong Kong, and deny them their right to protest and speak freely, it was of course only earlier this month that we saw the Court of Appeal in Hong Kong uphold the government's banning of the song Glory to Hong Kong. It was only just a few months ago, in March, that in Hong Kong we saw the passage into law of the new national security legislation known as Article 23, a law which includes sweeping definitions of national security adopted from mainland Chinese law, significant expansions of the definition of espionage, and significant jail sentences for criticising the government, contrary to Hong Kong's human rights obligations and not proportionate to any need for national security. And just 3 days ago, we saw an unprecedented mass conviction in the most ruthless illustration of yet of how Hong Kong's national security law is being weaponized to silence dissent. It represents now a near total purge of political opposition and highlights just how quickly, in such a short time, we have seen the disintegration of human rights in Hong Kong. Just this week also, we at Amnesty International published data showing that in 2023, China remained the world's leading executioner with the greatest use of the death penalty. And that is true even when the extent of the use of the death penalty remains unknown, as this data remains a classified secret. And as Amnesty revealed in a report last month, we increasingly see Chinese and Hong Kong students studying abroad, including here in the UK, our own country, living in fear of intimidation, harassment of themselves and their families, and surveillance as Chinese authorities seek to prevent them from engaging with sensitive or political issues while they are overseas. The Chinese authorities flat out refuse to acknowledge fundamental facts, presenting the repression of Uyghurs as an alleged counter to terrorism, or the suppression of civic space in Hong Kong as somehow providing stability in the city. But that is why it is so important that we're here today and all speaking so loudly, because it sends a message. It sends a message that the world is not convinced when the Chinese government seeks to mislead the world about the suppression of human rights experienced by its own citizens, whether on that bloody night in Tiananmen Square 35 years ago, or today in Tianjin, Tibet, Hong Kong, or abroad. While China consistently seeks to gaslight the global community, denying the scope and scale of violations of human rights, well documented not just by Amnesty, but also by bodies such as the United Nations, it is also trying to offer up its anti-human rights approach as a model for others. But by being here today, we are saying to our fellow human beings, whether they are in Tibet, Hong Kong, around China, or here, that our voices have not been silenced. Even as you are in prison, even as you are detained, even as you are under surveillance, or even as you are in exile, we hear you and we are with you. For as we stand here today, 35 years after June 1989, what we are saying loudly and clearly is that even when it takes years, we will keep working together, and ultimately, dissent can never be silenced, and truth and human rights will ultimately prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, our speakers, a wonderful speech. We are now going to have a moment of silence in commemoration of the brave people who lost their life 35 years before in the pursuit of freedoms and democratic reform. You may close your eyes and think about the words you would like to say to them. They are not forgotten. 今年係天安門鎮壓35週年，我哋而家會為35年前追求民主自由、社會公義嘅死難者默哀64秒。你可以閉上眼睛，心中諗住可以同佢哋講嘅説話，我哋冇忘記到佢哋。Our 64 seconds of silence morning will start now，而家開始。 to the stage now are performers from China Deviants for the performing arts with a piece of music by Yin Fei, a composer, a singer, songwriter advocating for human rights. 以下落嚟，我哋會請 China Deviant 嘅表演者上台。亦都我哋會請嚟一個為人權發聲嘅唱作歌手燕飛為我哋伴奏嘅。
Now we will present our art piece for this year's June 4th commemoration. It represents China's authoritarian regime, and it's increasing censorship in China, both domestic. What are you doing? Let go of me! No!
We now have a recording of Miss Chao Ha Wang, who is a freelance essayist in modern Chinese literature at the University of California. She was a committee member of the Beijing Autonomous Association of College Students in 1989. Her recording has been made in Chinese, but there is an English summary at the end. 我哋而家會播放黃超華嘅錄音。 黃超華係流亡嘅前6、4學運領袖，現居於美國。佢用普通話錄咗一段音，後面我哋會用英文去撮要嘅。
亲爱的朋友们，首先感谢主办方给我这个机会与大家交流。今天我们聚会为6·4亡灵点亮烛光，纪念35年前英勇抗暴的中国民众，纪念所有在强权政府残暴镇压中无辜倒下的死难者、伤残者，感念他们的亲人家属多年来承受的苦痛，尤其感念天安门母亲群体35年来的坚韧不拔。6·4亡灵是压在每一个良知尚存的中国人心底的沉重，时时叩问我们追求光明的决心和勇气。天安门母亲群体是映照良知和公义的镜子，在党国至上、经济至上、民族主义疯狂出击的恶劣环境中，6·4亡灵和天安门母亲为我们保存了最可珍惜宝贵的民族精神。正因为如此，中共政权不但动用正规国防军武力镇压本国和平抗议的学生和民众，还要抹去一切与6·4有关的集体记忆。抹去这些记忆，就同时掩盖了过去30年中国经济的腾飞是建立在6·4血腥镇压基础上这个关键事实。借助流血暴力制造的普遍社会恐惧，才产生出所谓必须坚持中共的领导才能维持稳定的谎言。1989年的社会运动是中国改革开放以来民众公开要求政治权利、公民权利的最大规模的抗争。之后30年，香港支持大陆爱国民主运动联合会、支联会年年纪念6·4时，都会提出还权于民的口号，就是继承89民主运动的基本立场，直指中共政权合法性来源的不公不义。支联会的存在早已成为中共当局的眼中钉，必欲除之而后快。香港经过2019年反送中修例的大规模抗争和2020年港版国安法实施，越来越多香港抗争者也意识到，对抗中共统治，坚持还权于民是我们的共同目标。89民运和6·4抗暴是我们共享的精神家园。6·4血腥镇压为中共拒绝民众政治诉求、持续使用国家暴力处理社会危机打开先例。任何一个国家的经济腾飞阶段都必然伴随着社会关系变动的巨大震荡。在中国，这些社会关系变动牺牲的永远是底层民众和普通老百姓。改制下岗的工人、农民工、留守儿童、失业青年、沦为房奴车奴的中青年、与官员发生利益冲突的经营者等等等等，不一而足。但是无论社会怎样震荡，一次次的社会危机就从来没有动摇过中共权贵的政治经济地位。只有内部权力斗争能够导致权贵的失宠倒台。所谓的反贪腐从来没有为民众带来更多发声的政治渠道，也没有创造出更活跃的公共空间。恰恰相反，习近平上台以来10几年的反贪腐不但没有有效遏制官员腐败，反而导致对民众更严苛的规训。6·4之后的每一次社会危机都会被中共政权指控为受少数人或外国势力煽动。中共当局从来拒绝接受一个现代社会里公民有权提出正当的政治诉求。多年来，迫于国家暴力的恐吓，民众退而选择散步、围观等迂回表达。当这些被严控之后，特别是当疫情期间清零政策下的高压管控侵犯到了日常生活的每个角落，高压锅终于爆炸，出现了所有人都没有预料到的白纸抗争。同样出乎当局意料的是， 白纸抗争期间人们喊出的口号，包括了向1989年天安门抗争致敬的声音。在30多年严密封锁之后，人们并没有忘记我们共同的集体记忆。如今，当局又在故伎重演，企图抹杀人们对于疫情封控的记忆，对于清零政策的记忆，对于白纸抗争的记忆。纪念6·4是悼念亡灵，是呼唤正义，也是维护集体记忆的实践。天安门母亲告诉我们，集体记忆是由每一个活生生的人合成的，每个倒下的人都不是简单的死亡数字，无论他是倒在6·4清晨的长安街，还是3月10日的拉萨街头，是在新疆的集中营，还是在上海的方舱。感谢各位，让我们一起纪念亡灵。我们没有忘记，我们永远不会忘记。
Before I give a summary of Wang Chao's speech, I would like to ask people who are standing in the front, would you like to sit down so that the people at the back can see the stage as well, please? 如果坐前邊嘅朋友可唔可以坐低咧？我哋後邊嘅人可以睇到台前嘅嘢。Thank you very much. The following is the summary of Wang Chao's speech. Today, we are here to commemorate the people killed just because they are exercising their basic rights on June 4, 1989, in Tiananmen, Beijing. We also pay our respect to the Tiananmen martyrs whose perseverance over 35 years taught us what the fight for justice really means. The Chinese government has tried to erase any memories of Tiananmen crackdown, and now they do the same on the zero COVID lockdown, or the 2019 Hong Kong protests, or the Tibetans' resistance, or the Uyghurs' suffering. However, when the white paper protests erupted in 2022, we heard shouting by the crowds paying tributes to their 1989 predecessors. To commemorate June 4th is an important act to preserving our collective memory in every individual, no matter from when and where. We are here, we are not forgotten. We will never forget. Our next speaker is Mr. Feng Chao, who is the Executive Director of Human Rights in China and the President of Humanitarian China. He was one of the student leaders during the 1989 Tiananmen protests. After the Tiananmen crackdown, he was arrested, imprisoned for a year, and forced into exile in the US over his role in the student movement. 我哋以下落嚟會請到周鋒鎖先生，佢係流亡前6·4嘅學運領袖，中國人權現任嘅執行主任，人道中國共同創辦人。喺6·4天安門鎮壓後，佢曾被通緝、被捕，最終被囚禁1年後，流亡美國繼續人權運動嘅。
Thank you for coming today. As we know, in Hong Kong, it's a crime to commemorate like this, and the national security law, like Article 23, means that everyone here could be a target of persecution by this totalitarian regime in Beijing. 谢谢大家，今天我们在这里纪念6·4 35周年。I am Executive Director of Human Rights in China and the President of Humanitarian China. I was a student leader 35 years ago on Tiananmen Square. I participated in the protest and organized the broadcasting station on Tiananmen Square. But I never imagined I was number 5 on the most wanted list by the Chinese government after the bloody crackdown. I was shocked, but I was also very proud. I remember this was the first time under communist China that millions of people went to Tiananmen Square to cry out their dream for free and democratic China, and not only in Beijing, where all walks of society came out to support, including policemen, soldiers. All over China, hundreds of cities, the call of freedom reverberates, and the whole world watches. In Taiwan, in Hong Kong, that's the first time that Chinese democracy, that's something we all can be proud of. Even after the massacre, what happened on Tiananmen Square contributed to the eventual fall of the Berlin Wall. That's something we all can celebrate today. For me, I will never forget all kinds of people want to speak for the first time, even though they were silent because of repression. And even the government-owned newspapers for a few days were covering the protests as truthfully as possible. Someone in Taiwan told me that at that time he believed that there was more freedom from what he heard than in Taiwan. But unfortunately, CCP took the wrong path. With the brutal, senseless massacre, China took on a dark path. That's why we are witnessing all the brutal repression today in Hong Kong, in the Uyghur concentration camps, in the Tibetan region. And that's why today's China is threatening Taiwan, a liberal democracy. We are here today. We must remember Wang Weiping. She was an intern doctor, just graduated. When she heard about the gunshots massacre, she went immediately to help. She was shot trying to rescue someone else who was wounded at Muxidi. We must remember Wang Nan. He was a high school student. He took a camera with him, trying to record what was happening. He was shot on the head. Actually, this helmet was on display in Hong Kong at the Tiananmen Museum a few years ago. But the martial law troops, in cold blood, refused medical service for him. He died while many people watched helplessly. This kind of brutality is not accident. This is not the first time that CCP killed its people like this. But the whole world was watching. And that's why we all know what happened. We must remember Lu Peng was shot dead when the troops shoot indiscriminately at the busiest place in the capital of Beijing. He was only 9 years old, and he wasn't the youngest dead. We must remember the Tiananmen mothers. We support their call for truth, justice, and repatriation. We must remember that's why China became today's China. Just today, President Zelensky of Ukraine talked about China helping Russia. This is a threat to everyone in Europe, everyone here, everyone in the world. Just a few weeks ago, Putin visited Tiananmen Square. Now, Xi Jinping and Putin, Russia and Communist China, they are the evil axis we must confront. 35 years ago, Gorbachev was visiting Tiananmen Square. When he talked with then President, then the General Secretary of CCP, Zhao Ziyang, they were partners in opening and reform. Unfortunately, the massacre purged CCP of everyone who is even a little bit open-minded. Jiang Zemin was chosen as a successor for Deng Xiaoping because he was the first to shut down a newspaper that was supporting the student on Tiananmen Square. Hu Jintao was chosen as Jiang Zemin's successor because Hu Jintao was fully armed in March on the street of Tibet in the first martial law, which was actually designed as a practice for the martial law in Beijing. Xi Jinping, nobody knew about him then, but his wife was known for signing to support the troops on Tiananmen Square. They have blood on their hands. We are here today. We must also remember what a different China could be, a free and a democratic China. At that time, we were inspired by the Solidarity Union in Poland. We want to call our student union Solidarity Student Union. And on the very day of the massacre, there was an election in Poland for the first time. Even though it was rigged, Solidarity Union won, surprisingly. That's what could happen to China. Just imagine a free and a democratic China today. How beautiful that would be. That's why every voice today counts. We must all work together to bring in this hope of free and a democratic China. Thank you. Let me show a few things that I have brought with me. This was a blood-stained tower from Tiananmen Square 35 years ago. Someone was shot there at the very place that I was. This tower was used to wipe the blood. This is the evidence of the murder on Tiananmen Square of the innocent student. It has been kept for 33 years in China until it was brought to me last year. It is also a sign of life and hope. This t-shirt was made by the students on Tiananmen Square. In Chinese, it says, democracy and freedom. This is why today so many people still remember. Because of Hong Kong, we are always thankful for Hong Kong. Thank you.
Apologize for the music playing earlier. Next, please welcome Miss Shen Yi Li. She is the convener of Taiwan Democracy UK and a member of Formosa Taiwan. She's a student activist active on various human rights issues such as LGBTQ plus social economic justice and anti-authoritarian regimes. She's now advocating for No Discussion, No Democracy Taiwan Parliament Reform Global Campaign. 以下落嚟，我哋請到嘅係李宣儀小姐，佢係英國青鳥行動嘅負責人，亦都係倫敦港台嘅成員之一。佢係一位學生社運者，係倡議不同嘅人權主題，包括 LGBTQ+、社會經濟正義、反極權專制。佢而家倡議緊嘅係沒有討論不是民主嘅倫敦反國會濫權行動。有請。
Hello, thank you everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I'm from Taiwan. I'm Taiwanese. Since I think some people might be feeling more comfortable if I speak in Chinese, so I will speak like half Mandarin and half English in this speech. And I cannot say I'm the representative of Taiwan, but at least I can represent part of Taiwan young people. Now in Taiwan, I always say we need to stand with Hong Kong and we need to stand with Chinese deviants. We need to stand with them. I try to promote this. And I try to connect the people overseas to have an overseas connection and global actions to resist the CCP. Recently, the CCP has started the military drills around Taiwan Ocean. They try to block Taiwan in a military ways and also in the international involvement. They try to block us from WHO, the World Health Organizations. They also block us to join many international societies, associations, and also lots of organizations. They don't want to let us use the name of Taiwan. They deny us to be a country. And also, the democratic countries are afraid to say Taiwan is a country. Ridiculous. So today, in this time, the Tiananmen Square event, I need to let people know, and the Taiwanese citizens knows, how terrible the CCP is. And we need to take down the CCP to tell them they are keep causing the sabotage of freedom and democracy. They need to free the Hong Kong prisoners. Now the situation in Hong Kong is getting more severe and severe. And it will also influence Taiwan. And it will cause the international interference. And I have told the people in my country, I told the Taiwanese, we need to gather together, we need to organize, we need to stand with Hong Kong, we need to support Hong Kongers. And we need to support and free the Chinese people. Even the Chinese people, the Chinese prisoners, they are out of freedom. They are still staying in the prisons. And we, Taiwan, we are a free country. We need to stand with them and protect ourselves as well. So recently, why I'm doing the protest? Because of the interference from the CCP, and also because they are trying to passing a ridiculous law in Taiwan. So that's why they just mentioned I'm doing no discussion, not democracy demonstration. I should let you know some details, but it might be a little bit complex, so I'll just make it short. And I will speak in both Mandarin and English. So in this protest, the first concern, 没有民主，没有民主，没有讨论，没有民主。他们现在就是国民两党，以国会改革之名行黑箱之实，强行通过法案，在5月28号3读已经通过了。那3读通过，他们现在就是要逼迫总统直接宣示法案。那现在民进党要进行大法官释宪。那在大法官释宪之前呢，我们需要集结众多民意，让大法官可以尊重民意，做出符合民意的裁决。所以我们需要集结更多群众。所以我才号召了全球海外串联、遍地开花的行动，以伦敦为发源，进行海外的抗争。那我们现在目前已经跟美西的团体，美国洛杉矶做串联，然后纽约的时代广场也会有很大的一个 banner， 然后还有温哥华香港组织，香港人挺台湾，香港人挺台湾民主。温哥华的香港人组织已经跟我们串联起来了，所以现在目前有伦敦、温哥华，还有洛杉矶，还有纽约做串联。接下来第3点诉求就是我刚才提到的，现在台湾面临的是内忧外患，我们必须一起抵制中共。中共不断的军机扰台，然后一直阻挠台湾加入国际组织，各种打压，各种否定台湾主权。甚至连民主国家都不敢承认台湾是个国家，岂有此理！甚至现在还有台湾本土企业和台湾本土政党想要跟中国共产党合作，岂有此理！还要强行通过法案，岂有此理！可以。So now I will use English to demonstrate our 3 concerns in this protest. The first one is about no discussion, not democracy. So the KMT and the TTP are using the name of Parliament reformation to black box the law, to pass the law, and to abuse the power, to stand on the top of the Taiwan political system, and to disregarding the people's rights. We are Taiwanese citizens. We need to stand up. We need to have the overseas connections. We need to stand with Hong Kong and the free Chinese people to have a big global actions, to stand together, to fight for the freedom and democracy. And then, it's a demonstrated and foreign interference. We need to receive CCP together. We need to not afraid of the TTP's threats, and that Taiwan stand firmly internationally to stand on our position to support the Asian free country. Thank you. Thank you. We support Taiwan democracy. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Feng Shuozhou and Xinyi Li, for your powerful speech. Stop repression in China and Taiwan. Stop repression in China and Taiwan. Stop repression in China and Taiwan. Stop repression of Tibetans and Uyghurs. Stop repression of Tibetans and Uyghurs. Human rights are universal. Human rights are universal. Human rights are universal. 同一世界，同一人權。同一世界，同一人權。同一世界，同一人權。June 4th, we will never forget. June 4th, we will never forget. June 4th, we will never forget. 毋忘六四，薪火相傳。毋忘六四，薪火相傳。毋忘六四，薪火相傳。We are now going to play some music that holds deep meaning to the June 4th collaboration. 我哋而家會播一啲同六四有深切關係嘅音樂。
Hi everyone, I'm Inti, a composer, singer-songwriter who grew up in China and came to the UK in 2018 to study. And later I actually found myself in exile simply because I performed some songs that the Chinese government doesn't like. Last year, on 4th of June, I released a song called It's My Duty in memory of the Tiananmen protests and massacre and white people movement and human rights defenders whose names are erased by the regime for 35 years. And after that, my family in China was harassed by the police. However, the more transnational repression I experienced, the more I wanted to speak up, because silence can never protect us. And today, in memory of the Tiananmen protests and massacre, a memory which has been suppressed by the regime for 35 years, I want to perform a song called Memory is a Crime by the Hong Kong singer Anthony Wong. This is my favorite song depicting post-Tiananmen era. As we remember, Hong Kong was the only place that held a large candlelight vigil for Tiananmen massacre victims for 30 consecutive years. This was possible because Hong Kong used to have vibrant civil societies before the Beijing regime dismantled it in 2019. And the civil society fostered so many songs like this, which empowered me tremendously when I was politically depressed. So I was singing 我已有罪, Memory is a Crime. 後悔當天走太前，道路腐壞了，不敢涉險。現在若問我，怎會這麼想紀念？連還未過，總有意義。如燭光都有罪，裝人刻多幾十年。如傷疤都有臉，未變臉。回憶即使有罪，真相怎麼敢無言？歷史假使有人便被發現，紅天不必答辯，只怕蒼山很茫然。葡萄不知兩兒，心已磨練。歷史知道向前，輾轉翻出30年，如今滄桑少年，我們蒼天。若歸順，為誰夢幻祭奠？願光創傷，這麼多告別，無需有是誰造就壯烈？願光創傷，信仰不會滅。Thank you.
Thank you for the performance. Our next speaker is Kong Zhongqing, Senior Analyst of Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, IPAC. She's a political and digital rights activist from Hong Kong, focusing on Hong Kong human rights, data security, and the United Framework Department. 以下我哋會請嚟來自香港嘅邝仲晴，佢係對華政策跨國協會聯盟議會聯盟嘅高級分析員。佢嘅研究範疇包括香港人權狀況、數碼保安同埋中共統一戰線工作部嘅活動。有請。
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking here to you all. June 4th, I've always talked about June 4th as a lesson to learn from. A reminder to all of us what the Chinese Communist Party really is. An authoritarian regime that would set its army on its own people who are asking for freedom and democracy. Yet, the students were not deterred by it. Citizens like Apple, Mr. Zhou, are not deterred by it. They were not and have not been taken over by their sense of powerlessness, even though we barely hear from China about what's actually happening inside in terms of resilience. The CCP has shown us again and again, it is nothing but a brutal regime. I ask myself almost every other day, how did Hong Kong become what it is now? But most of the time, I'm not asking for a geopolitical or historical answer. We, when I say we, I mean mainly myself and probably some of you as well, are just whinging about why my life has turned upside down. I want my life back. I want the privilege to be able to see politics sometimes as something outside of my normal routine. But people in jail, the 47 that were convicted just a few days ago, reminds us constantly the reality we live in. Being deprived of our roots, banished from our homes. It is painful. We feel powerless as we cannot change anything. We know they are lying, but they can just lie blatantly in our face and get away with it. But we should not be taken over by our powerlessness. Hong Kong is not like what Havel described as a post-totalitarian right now. we get to keep our moral judgment, at least secretly. Instead of everyone having to plead their allegiance loudly to Beijing, the government wants us to feel small, unimportant, and powerless. They want us to feel like that we are unable to change anything. But is that true? Is that true that we cannot change anything? Are we to be taken over by our sense of powerlessness? Margaret a veteran democratic activist, once said, 你有無力感，係因為你想有無力感，咁就乜都唔使做。You feel powerless because you want to feel powerless, and therefore you can justify doing nothing. Is it the government that induces our feeling of powerlessness, or is that we enjoy and prefer feeling powerlessness? When we praised the students in Tiananmen Square 35 years ago, when we praised Gwyneth Hall or Chow Hang-tung for their remarks in court, do we see them as people doing things that are beyond our capabilities? Do we say to ourselves, we are small potatoes, too unimportant to make a difference? Or do we think to ourselves, 世事都被我看透, I'm smart enough to know that resistance will not make a difference, so why bother? Or do we think pessimistically to ourselves, any kind of small progress is seen as paving the way to another crackdown? People is going to be arrested, just like the team who is supporting Chow Hang-tung was a few days ago, and justify another day curling up in bed, grieving for the people who are suffering. I'm not saying grieving or taking care of ourselves are not good things to do, but we are always unaware of the fact that we do have a choice. Passive or active, optimistic or pessimistic, we create an impact on the world. The question we have to constantly ask ourselves is, now what? What can I do? Have you registered to vote in July? Will you open the door when a candidate comes knocking on your door, and would you sit down and tell him or her that China is your prime concern, and you expect him as your representative to toughen up against China? Will you tell your candidate the reason why our city is in a state that it is in is because the UK has failed to honor its promise that's made under the Sino-British Joint Declaration, the promises that it has made to Hong Kongers? And the BNO scheme is nothing but a surrender policy. It's not accountability. Will you tell the candidate we cannot even represent ourselves because BNO holders cannot run for election even though we are British nationals? One thing I've learned from students on Tiananmen Square in 1989 is to be unapologetic. Be proud as we are, as Uyghurs, as Tibetans, as Taiwanese, as Chinese, and as Hong Kongers. We should not be overwhelmed by our senses of powerlessness. In 2020, Gwyneth Hall said, 1年前的6月9日之所以改變了整個香港，正是因為那一日，香港人放下有用冇用的爭拗，決定了，即使只能在死前掙扎2下，我都絕不投降。The reason why 9th of June 2019 changed the entire Hong Kong is because on that day, Hong Kongers decided to abandon the considerations of something being impactful or not. We have decided, even though we are only struggling before death, we will not surrender. We are here to demand accountability, freedom, and democracy, and we stand by it, regardless of what's to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next coming on stage is a UK solicitor who was originally a barrister in Hong Kong. He was the former convener of the Progressive Lawyers Group in Hong Kong. 跟住上台嘅係一位英國律師，佢之前喺香港係一位大律師，亦都係法政司會嘅前召集人李安然先生 Billy Lee。
Thank you for giving me a chance to speak here, because this is no longer free to speak in Hong Kong. As the MC just said, I was a barrister in Hong Kong, and I no longer practice as a barrister. The reason is quite simple, because I don't have any confidence or faith in the legal system in Hong Kong anymore. So I come to a place that I can feel I can speak freely, and I can be a lawyer that can help and serve my client without fear. So when we talk about lawyers, of course, we will talk about the legal system in Hong Kong. When around the world, the media or people, activists, NGOs criticize Hong Kong, the legal system, the Hong Kong government would always suggest that they still have judicial independence as an excuse to show that any conviction, any sentence will be legitimate. But the problem is, when we talk about judicial independence, what does it mean? It means the judiciary works independently for justice. We need judicial independence as a shield, as a protection, to protect us from the unlawful activities of the government against our rights. So when we say judicial independence, we're not saying the judge, they're acting independently to convict the people for upholding their own basic rights. We are saying the judge to protect us from the government. That's the meaning, that's the purpose for this judicial independence. But now in Hong Kong, we see the courts not only helping the government to convict activists, to convict citizens for speaking peaceful criticism against the government. The courts are not only doing that, they are also imposing very harsh sentence against the citizens. And please make no mistake, the United Nations has repeatedly and unequivocally to say that the national security law in Hong Kong is arbitrary. Hong Kong government should not apply this anymore. They should repeal the law and no longer not to use it against anyone in Hong Kong. So when the court used the law to convict people in Hong Kong, they're helping the government to suppress our basic rights. And I want to give you an example. The court is not only helping the government, the court is acting way beyond in suppressing the rights according to the agenda of the government. An example is that the final court, the top court in Hong Kong last year, when the court considered whether when someone admitted guilty, accepted they are guilty under national security law, whether they should be offered a 1/3 reduction of sentence. And the top court said no. That was the very fundamental principle in any common law legal system. When someone pleads guilty, they accept their guilt, they should offer a reduction of sentence. This is to show, to encourage the defendants to, because they are remorseful, we encourage them to gain a new life, to correct themselves, not to commit the same crime anymore. But the Hong Kong top court said no. Even you accept you are guilty under the national security law, we will take away your basic rights to have the 1/3 sentence reduction. So you can see the Hong Kong courts, they're not only fulfilling the wishes of the Hong Kong government, they work beyond that. So when we say the Hong Kong courts, they act independently, They are acting independently against justice. They're working way beyond the Hong Kong government asks. But when we say the Hong Kong legal system, when we say, oh, how bad it is, we cannot avoid talking about Zhao Hantong. Because when the Hong Kong legal system is suppressing the people there is someone still fighting in the judicial system for the basic rights of anyone still in Hong Kong. While we can still speak freely here, Zhao Hantong, although she is locked up by the Hong Kong government, by the judicial system, she still come forward in the court to speak on behalf of us, to speak on behalf of the victims of the Tiananmen massacre. So when I see the picture of the flyers that in your hands, her smiling face, how peaceful she is, but at the same time, how unwavering she is. She reminds me when I was in Hong Kong, when I was one of the audience in the candlelight vigil at Victoria Park. She was on the stage. She was asking us not to give up. Now, although the Hong Kong government keep on continuously to use different kind of crimes, trying to shut her mouth, trying to silence her, she's still speaking for every one of us. So I would like to hope every one of you, nothing can stop Zhao Hantong. But at the same time, because she has the power to speak on behalf of us, she can gain strength from us. So I ask every one of us to show solidarity to Zhao Hantong, to tell her, we will not forget her. We will not forget the victims of the Tiananmen massacre. For the people she has fighting for years. And we come together, this image will be shown on the press, and she will see this image, and she will gain strength from us. So thank you everyone, thank you.
光復香港，
時代革命，
光復香港
時代革命
，Fight for freedom，
，Stand with Hong Kong，
Fight for freedom，
Stand with Hong Kong，
光復香港，
時代革命，
光復香港
時代革命
，Fight for freedom，
，Stand with Hong Kong，
Fight for freedom。
Stand with Hong Kong。
We will now hear a pre-recorded message from Professor Tomoko Ako, teaching sociology and China study in the University of Tokyo. She's the board member of Asian Commons and the producer of the documentary She is in Jail, a film dedicated to Zhao Hantong and her June 4th campaign. 以下落嚟，我哋會播放一段由阿古智子教授嘅對話。佢係喺東京大學教社會學同埋中國研究嘅。佢係 Asian Commons 嘅 board member 啦，亦都係幸同在監獄紀錄片嘅監製。
Hello everyone, this is Tomoko Ako talking from the Tokyo, University of Tokyo. This year marks the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square protest and massacre. Ideally, rallies should be held around the world and in China every year to commemorate those who died in the protests. In addition, it is necessary to continue activities to verify what happened in the protests and why it occurred. However, in Hong Kong, where large-scale memorial rallies were held every year, even the word Tiananmen Square protest cannot be used. On May 28th, Zhao Hantong, the protagonist of the film She is in Jail, became the first person to be arrested in connection with the National Security Bill passed in this March to crack down on vandalism and foreign interference in Hong Kong. The reason given was that she targeted so-called sensitive date and posted on social media, spreading hatred against the Chinese government. In addition to her, 5 others have been arrested, including her mother. If found guilty, the 6 could face up to 7 years in prison. We must learn from history. We must think current issues, learning from history. And we can connect the past and the present to the future. Commemorating the victims of the Tiananmen Square protest and uncovering the truth of the incident will not darken our future. I believe that we should continue to be proud of our work to commemorate and memorize the Tiananmen Square protest. Thank you.
Okay. 阿古哲子教授嘅信息咧係關於鄒幸彤佢嘅母親同埋其他被第23條逮捕嘅社運人士，佢哋被逮捕嘅原因僅僅只係發布咗有關6.4事件嘅信息。喺呢一刻，請我哋舉起我哋嘅橫額、我哋嘅標語、我哋嘅抗議藝術品、我哋嘅紙張，無論上面有冇口號，而表達我哋同鄒幸彤以及所有因行使言論自由和抗議權利而被逮捕或拘留嘅人嘅人權抗爭者同埋社運人士嘅團結。Now, before we continue, let's raise up our banners, our placards, our protest artwork, our paper with or without slogans, to show our solidarity with Zhao Hengtong and all the human rights defenders and activists who are being arrested or in custody due to exercising their rights for freedoms or expression and protest rights. We would also like the speakers come forward to the stage. Huh? Yeah, with all the speakers come to join us for our photos moment. Yeah, exactly. We want to have a photo with everyone in the audience showing our solidarity with all the human rights defenders. We're going to take a photos. If you're uncomfortable with this, please cover your face or request a surgical mask from the steward. If you have a banner or a placard with you, please hold it up high. We're going to get a shot from the camera over somewhere. Where's the cameraman? In front of the stage. With those sitting on the edge of the stage, in front of the stage, you can get in closer to the center, then we can get you in the picture as well. 如果坐喺旁邊嘅朋友可以向中間靠攏嘅話，我哋可以盡量影得到大家。如果你哋唔方便入鏡嘅話咧，你哋可以同我哋嘅 steward 攞口罩啦，又或者暫時離開廣場中間嘅部分。In solidarity with Zhao Hengtong. In solidarity with Zhao Hengtong. In solidarity with all human rights defenders. 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 釋放鄒幸彤！釋放鄒幸彤！釋放鄒幸彤！釋放所有政治犯！釋放所有政治犯！釋放所有政治犯！釋放所有政治犯！ Free all human rights defenders in China and in Hong Kong now. Free all human rights defenders in China and Hong Kong now. Free all human rights defenders in China and Hong Kong now. Free all human rights Freedom of expression is human right.
Freedom of expression is human rights.
Freedom of expression is human right.
Freedom of expression is human rights.
Protest rights are human right.
Protest rights are human rights.
Protest rights are human right.
Protest rights are human rights.
In solidarity with 周幸彤
In solidarity with 周幸彤
釋放周幸彤
釋放周幸彤
In solidarity with all human rights defenders
In solidarity with human rights defenders
釋放所有政治犯
釋放所有政治犯
In solidarity with all human rights defenders
In solidarity with all human rights defenders
釋放所有政治犯
釋放所有政治犯
We are now going to play some music for Hong Kong. We can sing together. 香港 Fight for freedom
Stand with Hong Kong!
Fight for freedom
Stand with Hong Kong!
光復香港光復香港
中共！中共！消滅中共！
Our next speaker is Daniel Low, a representative of Workers Against the CCP. He's a Singaporean British actor, director, playwright, and musician. 以下落嚟我哋嘅發言嘉賓係 Daniel Low， 係 Workers Against the CCP 嘅代表。佢係一位演員、導演、編劇同埋音樂家。For people standing in the front, maybe we could sit down soon, so people at the back could see you. 企喺前面嘅朋友咧可以坐低㗎啦，我哋等後邊嘅人咧睇到我哋台上。
Thank you very much. My name's Daniel Yorklow. I'm here representing Workers Against the CCP. Some of you will have seen the magnificent performance art earlier from China Deviants. I work as a performer, but I'm just letting you know now, I have no performance plan today. So if somebody runs onto the stage and attacks me, it's not an act, so please feel free to come up to the stage and help me. In fact, I would love you to do that. I'm here representing Workers Against the CCP. We're a trade unionist organisation who campaign for workers' rights in China and Xinjiang and Tibet. We protest every second Sunday outside Covent Garden Apple store against Apple's repression of workers in Xinjiang and labour rights organisers across China. I'm going to tell you quickly. So the Communist Party of China likes to take possession of the Chinese identity. All Chinese are supposed to be the same, and we're all ruled by them. So I was born here. My father's from Singapore. My mother's white British, so I'm of mixed heritage. And I was told at an early age that I was Chinese, and I didn't know what that word meant, except I got called names every day at school. I tell you when I really did feel Chinese though, was on June the 4th, 1989. I was at drama school. I was staying in some sort of student dormitory. We had a tiny little television. You know, that television was old-fashioned even in the 1989. That was old-fashioned. The screen, some of you have probably got bigger screens on your mobile phones now, and the reception was awful. But I watched it happen on the news, and I can't even tell you the visceral sense of people who are like me, a long way away, suffering and dying for daring to speak up, for daring to raise their voices, for daring to dream of a better world. You know, I felt Chinese in that moment. Then, there, it changed me forever. And as we go on, we see the way the Chinese Communist Party has their brutal repression of Tibet, their brutal repression of Xinjiang, more recently their brutal repression of Hong Kong, and what they'd like to do to Taiwan. And they'd like us to forget all the atrocities they've committed, particularly June 4th, 1989. It's completely blacked out. So it will just disappear into history if they have their way. It'll just vanish. And then our lives become cheap. Our dreams become cheap. Our aspirations become cheap. Our expression becomes cheap. So thank you for coming out today. They cannot do this unless we acquiesce with them. So I say do not acquiesce. Keep remembering. Keep speaking out. Every year, June 4th, we will never forget. Thank you very much. Never, ever forget.
Our last speaker in person today is Cheryl Brooks, Amnesty International China Directors. 我哋最後一位現場講嘢嘅嘉賓咧係 Cheryl Brooks， 佢係 Amnesty International China 嘅 Directors。
Thank you for coming out today and for joining us on this important occasion. I just want to recognize the courage it has taken every single person who has come up here and spoken to you and helped to draw this through line from Beijing and Tiananmen Square in 1989 all the way up through Hong Kong of 2019 to the white paper protests of 2022. For each of you who have come up and spoken, we understand what that can take. We put out a report just in early May that spoke to students from mainland China and Hong Kong, that documented the kinds of risks that they worried about, the kind of isolation that they faced, the mental health impacts. And so for each of you who are here wondering if this is the right place to be, I just want to say that your fears are valid, and that every time you come out, that you're able to take one step forward to speak up for human rights, even in a small way, as Eleanor Roosevelt famously said, quietly and close to home. This is so valuable, and we see that and recognize that. I want to just speak very quickly about how Tiananmen has been intertwined in my life. I'm in a sort of middle generation. I remember 1989, but I don't remember seeing Tiananmen. I remember seeing, as a toddler, the Berlin Wall coming down. I remember seeing the Soviet Union break up. I remember learning that maps and atlases that we had at our house could suddenly, overnight, become inaccurate. And I think this was when I really learned about the power of people calling for respect and for representation. When I was an exchange student in Hong Kong, in Beijing first, we didn't talk about Tiananmen. It was hush-hush. The conversations we had with our classmates maybe spoke about soldiers, about missing cousins, and then quickly moved on. If we went to Tiananmen Square, an hour-long ride across the city on a bus, we mostly saw tourist groups and hawkers and long, low metal barricades the length of the avenue. Not many years after that, I was a tutor for Chinese political history classes. And I realized two things. I realized first that the professors and the scholars that I looked up to had learned about and experienced Tiananmen viscerally, themselves, or with friends, or classmates, or their own professors. And I learned that the students we were teaching, in many cases, weren't even born in 1989. They barely knew where to start when we spoke about Tiananmen. And it occurred to me how strange it must be to have been born into a world where this level of injustice could happen, but where its memory is so effectively suppressed. In my career, I've not had the good fortune to meet many people who were there on the square that day. I've not had the chance to speak to Ding Zilin or many of the mothers of those who died or were disappeared into China's prison system. But I did have, and do have every day, and I am so thankful for this, the chance to meet people who were inspired by what happened on Tiananmen Square, by those who came out day after day in the spring of 1989 and who stood up for freedom, who called for a change in their government, who wanted to participate in making their country a better place. These people who are now in jail, out of jail, but still under surveillance, facing charges in interminable pretrial detention, whether we're talking about Zhao Hongtong in Hong Kong, whether we're talking about filmmaker Chen Tinlin, who's currently facing a court date next week. I urge all of you to stand with me and to say, it is not a crime to commemorate Tiananmen. It is our duty. We remember June 4th.
Thank you, Sarah. A slight change of schedule. We have one more speaker in person today, who is Dara Turing, who is a Tibetan activist in London. 我哋而家會再有多一位發言者，佢係Dara Turing，係一個喺倫敦嘅西藏社運人士。
細聲少少先。
Thank you, sir. It was the last minute. I haven't prepared anything, but you know, we all share the same pain. We have the same goal. We have the same suffering, so I don't need to prepare anything because I can feel you, I can understand you. Today, especially this week, 1989, is the one of the darkest period in the history of China. Communist China has committed a crime against humanity, killing, massacre, torture their own students, their own children. For God's sake, they have been killing their own children. How can we forget this? We will never forget Tiananmen Square. Tiananmen Square is a massacre. Whole world knows. No matter what China tried to censor, China tried to erase the history, but together we are united here to remind the world that was happened in 1989. Millions of Chinese students were killed. That was fact. So we will pass this message to all over the world, to our young generation, and we'll keep this fight continue. We keep this fight alive. Exactly same thing happened in 1959. Same troops, same regime, same communist massacred Tibetan people. That's how we lost our country. Same thing happened in Hong Kong recently. Now Hong Kong is no more Hong Kong. It used to be a democratic Hong Kong, now it's no more. It's like a Beijing-run Hong Kong. We don't need that. Hong Kong is not China. Tibet is not China. So we stand together to remember what happened in 1989. We must remember this, and we must remind to the world Tiananmen Square massacre did happen. Even though in the Chinese schools it is completely deleted from their children's school lesson, they don't know anything about it. But it's our duty to teach, to educate everyone what happened in China, in Beijing, in Tiananmen Square, in Tibet, what happened in Hong Kong, what's happening with like Uyghur Muslims. More than 1 million Uyghur Muslims are still in concentration camps, still going on. Around like more than 1 million Tibetan children have been separated from their parents. Recently, they were forced and put in a colonial boarding school. China, the CCP is trying their best to erase the history of Tibet by erasing the culture, by brainwashing our young Tibetan children. So this is going on right now. So together, I request my brothers and sisters from Hong Kong, from mainland China, from pro-democratic, from Taiwan, from Uyghur, everyone, anybody who believe in human rights, let's defend the human rights together, let's fight for freedom together, and together we will take down the CCP. Now let's make a little noise so that we can send a direct message to CCP. Down, down, CCP! Down, down! No more PRC! No more! Down, down! No more! Down, down! No more! Free Hong Kong! Free Hong Kong! Free Hong Kong! Free Hong Kong! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free China! Free China! Thank you, brothers and sisters. Thank you.
Today, June 4th, 35th anniversary commemoration protest in London.